Sana always thought love looked like this, simple, sweet, and full of dreams. In the warm town of Morogoro, Tanzania, she and Juma were building a life that felt just right. They weren't rich, but they had big hopes. Every night, they'd sit under the stars and talk about their future. A small grocery store where they'd work side by side, serving neighbors and saving up for a better tomorrow. Juma was her best friend, her partner, her everything. At least, that's what she believed. But slowly, things began to change. Juma wasn't the same. He stopped holding her hand in public. He barely looked her in the eye when she talked about their store plan. When she laughed, he didn't laugh with her anymore. And then there was Amina, Sana's childhood best friend. She trusted Amina like a sister. But lately, Juma seemed more alive around her. He smiled more when Amina was near. He leaned in closer when she spoke. At first, Sana told herself it was just her imagination. She didn't want to be the jealous type. She didn't want to believe her heart could be wrong about two people she loved. But the silences got louder. Juma's phone calls grew shorter. His excuses became more frequent. And whenever Amina came by, Sana noticed how quickly Juma changed the subject or left the room. Her heart began to feel something it never had before. Not love, not joy, but a quiet fear. A fear that the man she loved was slowly becoming someone else's secret. Sana had always imagined her 30th birthday would be full of love, laughter, and the people who mattered most. She wore her favorite yellow dress, the one Juma said made her look like sunshine. Friends gathered at a small local restaurant in Morogoro. There was music, food, and even a local TV crew covering inspiring women in business. Sana felt proud. She wasn't where she wanted to be yet, but she was on her way. Then it happened. While she was cutting her cake, she turned and saw them, Juma and Amina, just a few steps behind her. It wasn't just a friendly hug. It was long. Too long. His hand lingered on her back. Amina looked up at him with a softness that made Sana's stomach twist. And to make it worse, one of the TV cameras caught it all. The room suddenly felt too quiet, even with the music playing. A few guests exchanged confused looks. Someone whispered, "Did you see that?" Sana stood frozen, holding a knife in one hand and her breath in the other. She couldn't speak, couldn't even blink. Everything slowed down in that moment, her birthday, her trust, her whole world. Later that evening, after the guests left and the sun had gone down, Juma came to her with a cold face and an even colder voice. He didn't apologize. He didn't explain. He just said, "We're done." Just like that. No warning. No softness. No love left in his eyes. Sana didn't cry in front of him. She just stared at the door as he walked away, leaving behind the birthday balloons, the cake, and a woman whose heart had just shattered into 100 quiet pieces. The next morning, the house felt colder. Not because of the weather, but because something was gone. Love, warmth, safety. Juma was in the bedroom, silently packing his things. No goodbye kiss. No, let's talk. Just folding shirts like he hadn't once dreamed in that room with her. Sana stood by the doorway, arms crossed, trying to hold herself together, while everything inside her was falling apart. He didn't just take his clothes. He took hers too, Amina's. Hidden at the back of the wardrobe were a few dresses that didn't belong to Sana. She'd never noticed before. Now it made sense. He wasn't just walking away from their love. He'd been preparing this exit quietly, piece by piece, lie by lie. Outside, the sun hit the metal of his car. It looked newer than she remembered. That's when she realized it wasn't his. Juma had once told her he was fixing it for a friend. Another lie. The car was his now. Just like Amina was. Sana watched him place a photo album into a box, one they'd made together during their first year. The cover was dusty. They hadn't opened it in a while. He didn't even look at it. He just tossed it in like trash. Every plan they had, the grocery store, the wedding, the little garden she wanted out back, disappeared with every item he packed. And still, she didn't cry. Her heart was screaming, but her lips stayed shut. She didn't beg him to stay. She didn't ask for reasons. She just stood tall, watching the man she once loved pack up her memories like they meant nothing. When he finally closed the car door and started the engine, he didn't look back. And even though it felt like her chest was breaking open, Sana stood strong in the silence. Because sometimes strength isn't loud. Sometimes it's standing still while the person who broke you drives away with your past, and you let them go. Sana could have stayed in bed for weeks. She could have cried every night and shut the world out. But she didn't. Heartbroken, yes, but broken? Never. She had no money left, no love to hold on to, and no one beside her. Still, something inside her whispered, "Stand up." So she did. With her last handful of coins, Sana bought a few items: cooking oil, salt, matches, a few tomatoes, and bars of soap. She found a quiet corner along a dusty road in Morogoro, borrowed an old wooden shelf from a neighbor, and set it up like it was a $1,000,000 store. No sign, no fancy setup, just her shelf, and hope. The first day, only one customer stopped. But Sana smiled like she was serving a crowd. She greeted each person with kindness, even when they just walked by. People noticed. Not right away, but they noticed. At night, she didn't rest. She borrowed a cracked laptop from the neighbor's son, who studied IT. It only worked when plugged in, and the internet was slow, but it didn't matter. She read everything she could about small business, customer service, and retail tricks. She took notes on paper bags. She watched videos with the volume low, so no one would hear her crying between lessons. She had nothing, but she gave everything. No one clapped for her. No one posted about her. But each morning, she returned to that little stand, straightened her shelf, and stood tall in the same spot where her life had once fallen apart. Sanaa wasn't waiting for help. She was building her own rescue, one item, one lesson, one long, silent night at a time. At first, people only stopped at Sanaa's stand out of curiosity or pity. A few neighbors whispered, "Poor girl. Juma left her for her best friend." But Sanaa didn't care. She greeted them with a smile, gave exact change, and said thank you like she meant it every single time. Then something changed. A mother came back the next day for more cooking oil, saying, "Yours lasts longer." A young man told his friend, "Buy your snacks from her. She's fair." Word began to spread, not about her heartbreak, but about her honesty, her prices, her warmth. Her one-shelf grocery stand slowly became something bigger. She saved every coin she earned. After 2 months, she added a second shelf. Then a small basket of fresh vegetables, tomatoes, onions, green peppers. She woke up early to buy them from the morning market and cleaned each one by hand. Then came the homemade snacks, groundnut brittle, fried cassava, banana chips. She packaged them in little brown paper bags and hand-wrote the prices with a blue pen. But what made people love her most wasn't the goods. It was the way she treated them. When someone couldn't afford sugar, she let them pay later. If a tired mama needed rice and had only half the money, Sanaa gave her the rest and said, "Next time." Soon, people weren't just shopping, they were lining up. The same neighbors who once pitied her were now sending their children to her with shopping lists. Some even came just to talk, to ask for advice, or to sit near her stand for a moment of peace. Sanaa no longer thought about Juma or Amina every day. The memories were still there, but they didn't hurt as much anymore. They had faded like dust in the wind, replaced by the sound of coins in her tin box and the joy of doing something real. What once felt like the end of everything had become the beginning of something powerful. She wasn't just rebuilding her life, she was growing it, right there on a dusty road, one customer, one smile, one brave day at a time. It was just another sunny afternoon at Sanaa's growing shop. Her small stand had turned into a proper wooden stall now, painted blue and decorated with handmade signs. A few customers were browsing her snacks and vegetables when she looked up and froze. There he was, Juma, wearing dusty jeans, an old t-shirt, and a look on his face like he didn't know where else to go. Behind him stood Amina, eyes lowered, her once perfect hair now tied up in a tired bun. They looked smaller somehow, less shiny, less proud. Sanaa's heart didn't race. It didn't ache. It just stood still. Juma walked toward the shelf like any customer, picking up a packet of salt and acting like he was comparing prices, as if he hadn't broken her heart in front of a crowd, as if he hadn't walked away without explanation. Amina stayed behind him, close but silent, avoiding eye contact. They didn't say hello. They didn't ask how she was. Juma just picked up 2 items and stepped into the queue, pretending like they hadn't shared a life, a dream, and a deep betrayal. And Sanaa? She didn't flinch. She didn't greet them. She didn't even lift her eyes for more than a second. When it was Juma's turn, she served him like any other customer, calm, professional, distant. "That'll be 1,400 shillings, she said, her voice steady, her heart steady too. He fumbled in his pocket, as if searching for change he barely had. She waited, patient and quiet, just like she did with everyone. There was no anger in her face, no tears, just strength wrapped in silence. When he finally paid and stepped aside, Sanaa turned to the next customer with a smile. The man who once left her broken now stood in line like everyone else, unimportant, unseen. The woman who betrayed her stood in the background, looking lost in the place where they had once won. And Sanaa? She didn't just move on. She rose so high they had to look up just to see her standing still. It started like any other day. The sun was hot, dust swirled on the road, and Sanaa was arranging bananas on her front table. Business was steady, and a few familiar faces were lined up. Then a little boy, barefoot and shy, walked up to her stall. He looked no older than 6. His clothes were torn, and his eyes scanned the shelves like he was counting with his heart instead of money. Sanaa leaned down gently. "What do you need, Ntoto?" she asked with a warm smile. He mumbled, "Flour and cooking oil, but I only have 300 shillings. It wasn't even enough for one item. Without thinking twice, Sanaa bent down, took a small bag of flour, a half bottle of oil, and even added 2 bananas. She placed them in a paper bag and handed it to him. The boy looked confused. But I don't have enough. Sanaa smiled and tapped his shoulder. You'll pay me with a hug. Deal. The boy gave her the tightest hug his tiny arms could manage, then ran off with his bag. What Sanaa didn't know was that someone across the road had filmed the whole thing, her kindness, her softness, her joy in giving. The video hit social media that evening with the caption, "This woman forgave betrayal with kindness. Now she feeds others with the same heart that was broken." Within hours, the video exploded. People across Tanzania and beyond began sharing it. Comments flooded in, some from strangers, others from women who had gone through heartbreak and found hope in her story. Sponsors started reaching out. A local food company offered to supply her stand for free. A women's foundation messaged her about funding. Even radio hosts started mentioning her name as the woman with the unshakable heart. Sanaa didn't cry, not out of sadness, but from something deeper. Gratitude, strength, peace. She had never done it for cameras, never expected anything in return. But somehow, her quiet goodness had found its way into the world, and now the world was sending love right back. The woman they once whispered about? Now they celebrated her. Not because she was loud, but because her kindness spoke louder than betrayal ever could. One quiet morning, just before the shop opened, Sanaa saw a familiar figure walking slowly toward her stand. It was Amina. Gone was the confident woman who once stood beside Juma like a prize. Her eyes were puffy, her scarf loosely tied. Her shoulders slouched like the weight of guilt had been sitting there for months. She didn't speak right away, just stood in front of Sanaa, hands trembling. I'm sorry, Amina finally whispered. I didn't come to ask for anything. I know I broke your heart, and I regret it every day. Sanaa looked at her calmly, her hands still placing fruit into baskets. She didn't rush to respond. After everything, her peace didn't belong to anyone else's timeline. Amina took a step closer, her voice cracking. You were my sister. I don't know how I let it happen. I was weak. And he wasn't worth what I lost. Still, Sanaa didn't cry. She just nodded slowly and said, I forgive you, Amina. Truly. Amina's eyes lit up with surprise. But then Sanaa added gently, but my heart? It's closed now. Some doors don't open twice. There was no anger in her voice, just truth. Amina blinked back tears and walked away without a reply. Some lessons arrived too late. Later that week, Juma came in. He looked thinner, older, with tired eyes and worn-out shoes. He tried to smile like the old days, but Sanaa stayed quiet behind the counter. I was wondering if I could get sugar and flour, on credit, he muttered, rubbing the back of his neck. I'll pay you back by Friday. She didn't laugh. She didn't raise her voice. She just scanned the items and said, full price only. No credit here. He looked up at her, eyes searching for softness. Sanaa, I know I messed up. I shouldn't have. She stopped him with one calm look. No need, she said. You made your choices. Now live with them. Juma took the items, paid in silence, and walked away slowly, carrying more shame than groceries. Sanaa didn't gloat. She didn't celebrate. But in that moment she knew. Some people only learn your worth after they've lost their place in your life. The sun was setting over Morogoro, painting the sky in soft orange and gold. Sanaa's store was buzzing with evening customers, mothers picking up dinner ingredients, teenagers grabbing snacks, and older folks chatting near the crates of fresh tomatoes. Then he walked in. Juma. No announcement, no hesitation, just calm steps toward the corner where the reusable grocery bags hung. He picked up two and walked to the counter like he was just another face in the crowd. No greetings. No apologies. Just silence. Sanaa saw him, of course. How could she not? But her face didn't change. Her hands kept moving, scanning items, handing out change, offering kind words to the next person in line. When it was finally his turn, she met his eyes for half a second, just enough to show him she recognized him, and then nothing more. She scanned the bags and said plainly, that'll be 1,200 shillings. Please wait in the queue. Her tone wasn't cold, but it wasn't warm either. It was professional, polite, distant, like she'd never known the taste of his name on her lips, or the weight of his promises in her hands. Juma nodded, eyes low. He didn't say a word. He reached into his pocket, pulled out crumpled bills, and placed them on the counter. He didn't ask for credit this time. He didn't try to explain. Maybe he finally realized she wasn't the same woman he once left behind. She counted the cash, placed the bags into his hands, and called, next. Juma stood there for a second longer, like he wanted to say something, but he didn't. He turned and walked out, blending into the fading light. Sanaa didn't look back. She served the next customer with the same smile she always wore, because by now she knew something deep. Closure doesn't always come with words. Sometimes it's a simple sale, a clean transaction, and a heart that no longer bends for people who walked away. Years later, The woman who once stood on a dusty road with nothing but a single shelf now owns 3 thriving stores across Tanzania. Sana's name is known far beyond Morogoro. Her shops are clean, colorful, and always full of customers, of laughter, of stories. But her biggest success isn't the money. It's the lives she touches. She trains young women in business, girls who were once told they were too soft or too poor to lead. Sana teaches them how to budget, how to price items, how to speak with confidence. She funds scholarships for girls in rural areas who want to finish school but have no support. And on weekends, she speaks at women's empowerment events, telling her story not with bitterness, but with boldness. At one event, as she stood on stage in a bright kitenge dress, the lights dimmed and a video played, clips of her journey, the tiny stand, the viral video, the growing shop. And finally, the line that had followed her across the country. She held her dignity and gave him groceries. The crowd rose in applause. Women clapped with tears in their eyes. Some had lived her pain. Others had only heard about it. But everyone could feel the strength behind her silence, the beauty in how she rose. Sana smiled, standing tall, not just as a businesswoman, but as proof that heartbreak doesn't have to be the end. It can be the beginning of a harvest. And the woman they once pitted? Now she's the one building empires, quietly, kindly, and unshakably strong.